Undercover boss buys a burger from his own store. Could not believe when he hears customers getting humiliated. The man walked in slowly, Vietnam vet cap on his head, hand gripping his wife's arm for balance. He smiled as he approached the counter and asked the question he'd asked a dozen times before. "Do you still offer free coffee for veterans?" The manager, a sharp-dressed man in his 30s, scoffed. He looked the old couple up and down and said, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "That was the old owner's policy. This is a modern franchise. We're not a soup kitchen." The woman blinked, stunned. The man swallowed hard, nodded, and they both turned and walked out in silence. Humiliated. But what that manager didn't know is that someone sitting just a few tables away had heard everything. And that man was the founder of the entire company, and he was about to change everything. Stay with me, because what happens next will restore your faith in dignity, respect, and why the old ways still matter. Walter Briggs wasn't born with much, but what he had, he earned. He grew up in a small farming town in Nebraska. His father was a war veteran turned welder. His mother worked the local diner, sun up to sundown, always with a smile, even when her hands ached. Walter learned early that hard work fed your stomach, but kindness fed your soul. In his 30s, after being laid off from a manufacturing plant, Walter used what little savings he had, along with a secondhand food truck, to chase a simple dream. Make food for people who are forgotten. Feed folks like you'd feed your own family. And that's how Heritage Grill was born. Not with business plans or investors, but with grilled onions, ground beef, and free coffee served in styrofoam cups to veterans who couldn't afford a meal. Every Sunday, Walter would hand out burgers at the VA hospital. He never charged a dime. He made a rule that stuck. If someone walks in with worn shoes and a heavy heart, feed them first. Ask questions later. Over time, Heritage Grill grew from a truck to a restaurant, then into a chain, but the soul stayed the same. Walter built more than a burger joint. He built a community diner for America's unsung heroes: seniors, veterans, factory workers, widows, bus drivers, and truckers. It wasn't just food, he'd say. It was respect, hot off the grill. But 5 years ago, Walter had a heart attack. He collapsed behind the counter while refilling a customer's coffee. The doctors warned him, "Slow down or it's over." Reluctantly, Walter stepped away. He handed the reins to a young executive team that promised to modernize without changing the spirit. He believed them, but as time passed, letters and emails started trickling in. One from a longtime customer named Helen broke him. "I've been coming here since 1994. I lost my husband in Iraq. Your staff used to bring me coffee before I asked. Now they rush me. It used to feel like home. Now it feels like I'm in the way." Walter read that sentence over and over again. "Now it feels like I'm in the way." That hit deep, because Walter had built Heritage Grill for people like Helen, people who carried grief quietly, who asked for little, who just wanted a place to feel seen. So he made a decision. He pulled his old denim jacket from the closet, laced up the same sneakers he used to wear on the food truck, slipped on a plain cap. No fanfare, no camera crew. Just Walter, walking back into the world he built, looking like just another senior customer with stories no one listens to anymore. He sat in the corner, ordered a burger, and watched. What he saw cracked something inside him. He witnessed a store that had forgotten its soul, staff ignoring seniors, managers rushing veterans. No warmth, no smiles, no gratitude. He saw the kind of cold he'd spent his life protecting people from. And at that moment, Walter knew. He hadn't come back to visit. He'd come back to take back his legacy. It was just past noon when Walter stepped inside his original Heritage Grill location. He hadn't been there in over 3 years. The smell of grease and grilled beef still hung in the air. But the warmth, the human soul of the place, gone. No one greeted him. No one even looked up. He shuffled toward the corner table by the window, the same one he used to clean himself every night before locking up. He had named it Helen's Spot, after a widow who used to come in every Sunday with her dog-eared Bible and a photo of her late husband. Now it was sticky, the window smudged, and the smiles nowhere to be seen. Walter sat quietly, his old cap pulled low, his hands trembling slightly. Not from age, but from what he was already sensing. Something was deeply wrong. He watched as an elderly woman in her late 70s approached the counter. She was wearing a faded cardigan and holding a small, wrinkled coupon like it was gold. "Hi, sweetie," she said gently. "I have the senior meal special. It's all I ever get." The teenage cashier didn't even look at her. She scanned the coupon, then rolled her eyes. "This is expired 2 months ago." "Oh, I didn't realize. They usually take it," the woman said, flustered. "Can I still—" "You can either pay full price or leave it," the cashier snapped, tossing the coupon in the trash. The woman stood frozen, her face flushed with shame. Walter leaned forward, heart aching. The woman reached into her purse, pulling out a few wrinkled dollar bills and quarters. Her fingers fumbled. She was trying to do the math out loud. I think this should cover it." It didn't. The cashier let out a sharp sigh. "Whatever, I'll just ring it as regular. Next." She was handed a cold sandwich and an unseasoned side of fries. Barely enough for a child, let alone someone who had probably lived through 2 wars and a husband's funeral. She walked to a table, alone, her hands shaking slightly as she unwrapped the sandwich. Walter clenched his jaw. This wasn't how he built Heritage Grill. And just as he tried to calm himself, the door opened. A loud group of teenagers waltzed in, laughing, joking, all with phones out. The cashier's face lit up. "Yo, y'all back again?" she smiled. "Let me get you hooked up." "Can we get the youth bundle?" one asked. "Of course," she chirped. "I'll make sure y'all get the fresh batch. Fries coming straight out the oil. Extra sauces, bigger portions, even free drinks." They high-fived across the counter. Walter's eyes widened. He leaned in and checked the overhead menu. The youth bundle wasn't on it. He quietly walked up to the register. "Excuse me," he said, voice raspy. "Do y'all still do senior specials?" The cashier didn't look up. "Nah, discontinued, not enough profit." "Was it posted?" "No idea. Probably on the website or whatever." Walter nodded, slowly turned, walked back to his seat. He didn't say a word. But inside he felt something crack, not from heartbreak but from fury. The place he built to honor the forgotten had become a place that discarded them. Free meals for the loud and young, shame and silence for the old and kind. And just then, a storm began to brew inside Walter Briggs. He wasn't just going to sit and watch anymore. He was going to make them remember who built this place and who it was built for. If you believe our elders deserve more respect than this, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter, and we'll keep telling them until something changes. Back to story. Walter slowly stood up from his seat, tray in hand. He hadn't touched the burger. His appetite was gone. He walked with a slight limp now, the leftover reminder of a life lived on concrete floors and cold mornings behind a grill. But his ears still worked just fine. As he approached the trash bin, he glanced over toward the back hallway, the one that led to the kitchen and office. A door had been left slightly ajar. Maybe someone forgot to shut it, or maybe it was fate. Walter accidentally wandered a little too close, pretending to be looking for the bathroom. That's when he heard it, a voice, sharp, arrogant, and painfully familiar. Jake, the store's new young manager. Walter had hired his father years ago. Now the son was in charge. What Walter heard next made his blood run cold. "Honestly," Jake said, chuckling, "this whole senior discount era is over. They just sit around too long, hog the booths, and tip like it's still 1982. Another voice laughed. "I know, right?" One of them asked for hot tea and honey. I gave her tap water and ketchup. Jake kept going. "We're phasing that crowd out, slowly. Corporate gave me room to make modern adjustments. We just want the younger crowd. More money, faster turnover. Seniors, veterans. They're not the future. They're a burden." Walter's heart dropped. "Veterans think they deserve everything for free. It's not 1970 anymore," Jake sneered. "Just because you wore a uniform doesn't mean you get a $4 burger for $1. Someone else chimed in, mocking a slow-speaking customer with a shaky voice. Laughter followed. Walter stepped back, stunned. He braced himself against the wall. His hands weren't shaking from age now. They were trembling with fury, with betrayal. This wasn't poor training. This wasn't a bad attitude. This was a calculated plan to erase the very people Heritage Grill was built for. And the worst part, corporate had no idea. Jake had twisted Walter's original mission, weaponized his absence to build something soulless. Walter slowly made his way back to the dining room. He scanned the room now through different eyes. The older woman eating alone, picking at a soggy burger. The senior couple by the window who hadn't gotten their order in 20 minutes. The staff laughing behind the counter, ignoring them all. Something inside Walter snapped. This wasn't just about cold fries or rude service. This was about dignity. This was about justice. And as he sat down again, silently, he made a decision. The man they thought was invisible was about to become unforgettable. The door chimed again. In walked a family, 3 generations deep. A sight Walter used to cherish. The kind of family that reminded him of Sunday afternoons and small-town parades. Grandparents, children, and grandchildren all gathered around a single booth. At the head of the group stood a man in his late 90s, walking slowly with a cane and wearing a proud, slightly faded World War II veteran hat. Walter sat forward in his seat, his chest tightening. That hat alone should have brought respect. Honor, a free meal even. Instead, the family stood awkwardly near the entrance for over 10 minutes. No one welcomed them. No one handed them menus. Staff bustled past them as if they were ghosts. The young granddaughter, maybe 8 or 9, whispered, "Grandpa, are we not allowed to sit?" The old man smiled gently. "They're probably just busy, honey." But they weren't. The cashier was chatting with a coworker about a party. A cook was scrolling on his phone. No one made a move. Finally, the son stepped up to the counter. "Excuse me, we're ready to order." The cashier turned slowly, clearly annoyed. "What do you want?" she asked flatly. The grandfather leaned forward, voice full of nostalgia. "I'll have the classic Heritage combo. Always loved it. You still do that, right?" The cashier let out a short laugh, then rolled her eyes. "We don't call it that anymore," she snorted. "That's like, from your era." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "You probably mean the retro burger. It's $2 more now." The old man looked confused. "Oh, I see." The son looked down, visibly embarrassed. The granddaughter gripped his arm. "Can we still eat here, Grandpa?" He nodded softly, but his hands were shaking, not from weakness, from quiet humiliation. Walter clenched his jaw, his vision blurred, not from tears but from rage held back for too long. He looked around again. All the original touches were gone. No Veterans Eat Free sign, no frame photo of Helen and her Sunday Bible, no chalkboard with the daily senior special. Even the names had changed. No more Heritage Combo, no more Briggs Classic. Everything now had slick, trendy titles like The Flex Meal and Gen Z Smash. His legacy had been erased. All the symbols that once said, "You belong here," had been replaced with ones that screamed, "You're not wanted." Walter rose from his seat slowly. He walked toward the counter. The staff barely noticed. But behind those tired eyes and worn jeans stood the man who built every brick in this place. The same man whose values were now being mocked inside the very walls he once scrubbed clean every night. He stopped just a few feet away. And in that moment, something shifted. He didn't just feel disrespected. He felt like every single person over 60 had just been spit on. And that was the final straw. Walter walked to the counter, slowly but steady, like a man who had carried the weight of generations on his shoulders. The manager, arms crossed, gave him a lazy glance. "Something wrong, old man?" Walter didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a worn leather wallet. He opened it. Inside, a cracked plastic badge, yellowed with time. The photo showed a much younger man, grease-stained and smiling. It read, "Walter Briggs, founder." Employee number 001 gasps rippled through the room, but Walter wasn't done. He laid the badge flat on the counter like it was a gavel. Then his voice, calm, low but thunderous in meaning, filled the air. "My name is Walter Briggs. 30 years ago, I built this place with these hands. I flipped the first patty. I cleaned the first fryer. I poured coffee for veterans because they gave more than they ever took. I made the senior special because dignity should come with age. not be taken away by it. And today, I watched you make a hero feel invisible. The entire dining room went still. Even the grill stopped sizzling, as if the kitchen itself was listening. The manager blinked, his face pale. Sir, I didn't know." Walter turned, his eyes like steel. "Number, you did know. You just didn't care. And that's worse than ignorance." Murmurs from customers. One woman quietly wiped a tear from her cheek. The cashier slowly backed away from the register. The moment had shifted. Walter wasn't just a man anymore. He was the soul of Heritage Grill, and everyone knew it. Walter didn't hesitate. He turned toward the manager, pointed squarely. "You're done here. Take your things. You no longer represent what we built." No argument, no second chances, just the silence of justice long overdue. Then Walter faced the rest of the stunned staff. "This store is under my control again, starting now. And you've got a choice. You can stay and help me rebuild a place where honor lives. Or you can leave, with the ones who thought dignity had an expiration date." A pause, then, one by one, heads nodded. A few employees lowered their eyes, ashamed. But one young cashier stepped forward and said softly, "Mr. Briggs, I didn't know, but I want to learn. I want to help." Walter gave a small nod. "That's all I've ever asked." But he wasn't finished. He left the store, walked across the street to the tiny diner where he saw the veteran family retreat after the insult. He opened the door, heart pounding. "Sir, ma'am, my name's Walter Briggs. I own the Heritage Grill, and I owe you a meal and an apology I'll never stop meaning." The old veteran stood slowly. "We used to come there every Sunday. My wife loved the window seat." Walter smiled, eyes glistening. "Then let's bring that back." He walked them across the street like old friends returning home. He gave them the corner booth by the window. Then he poured their coffee with his own 2 hands, just like he had 3 decades ago. Finally, Walter stepped into the middle of the restaurant, cleared his throat. "Everyone, thank you for your patience. Today marks a new beginning. Seniors will eat with honor again. Veterans drink free, for life. And no one is ever disrespected for growing older, because age is not a weakness. It's a badge of survival. And this place was built for survivors." The restaurant erupted in applause. But Walter? He just sat down quietly beside the old veteran and shared a burger. Because sometimes the best leadership isn't loud, it's humble. And from that day forward, Heritage Grill became a home again. If you want to see more powerful moments like this, subscribe. Because every week, we tell real stories that fight for dignity, respect, and the values we grew up with. The whole moment was caught on video by a teen in the corner who uploaded it online. It went viral overnight. Millions watched Walter Briggs stand up for that elderly couple. Thousands shared their own stories of being pushed aside, ignored, or disrespected just for growing old. Walter didn't stay quiet. He sent that video to every Heritage Grill in the country, along with a new mandate: Silver Hour, 7 to 9 a.m. weekdays, 50% off for seniors, veterans, eat free Fridays, and on every wall, built by hands that fed this country, served with a heart that remembers. Now when seniors walk in, they're the first to be greeted, because dignity isn't old-fashioned, it's overdue. And one man's silence breaking reminded a nation what respect really looks like.